Hello, today we'll be looking at the protests that are happening in Poland right now and how they compare with the 1969 1970 protests in Canada and the famous abortion caravan. The protests happening in Poland are in reaction to the already strict laws surrounding abortion. Right now, the government is trying to introduce the in vitro rights laws, which would not allow abortion on the grounds of fetal impairment, as it is being argued discriminatory against fetuses. Using the triangle tool, we can identify many of the struggles women face in terms of body autonomy. On the structural and institutional level, women are met with laws and sanctions which disallow abortion. For example, in Canada, prior to Pierre Trudeau passing the 1969 Criminal Law Amendment Act, abortions were completely banned, with the punishment being death or 14 years in prison depending on intent. The new 1969 Criminal Law Amendment Act, although an improvement, still only allowed for subsidized abortions in hospitals on the grounds of a therapeutic abortion committee of 3 doctors' approval. The guidelines for what reasons may or may not be acceptable were vague, and so delivered according to the committee's discretion and varied hospital to hospital. Women in rural areas or small towns with no hospital or maybe just one hospital would have to travel on their own dime to bigger cities where they could get approval and proper services and avoid the social sanctions of getting an abortion in a small town. The new law also legalized birth control and contraception, but the same problems surrounding access to birth control and little knowledge in schools about family planning made this new law ineffective, and women in Canada were not satisfied. Ideologies about women's bodies being sacred carriers of babies also played into the restrictions around the reasons it is okay or isn't okay and justifiable to want an abortion, as well as campaigns which played on the hearts of Canadians, making abortion feel like murdering a helpless baby. In Poland, a similar history surrounding the legalization of some abortions took place. In the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution Act in 1983 finally allowed for legal abortions in 3 scenarios only: if the pregnancy endangers the life of the woman, in cases of rape, and in cases of fetal impairments. Again, though, women in Poland were not satisfied with this, but because of the political climate, chose not to protest against it at the time. Most women who can afford it have private abortions and pay out of pocket for birth control. How are Canada and Poland similar, and how are they different in terms of what they protest for and how they protest for it? Not surprisingly, both groups took to the streets with signs, chants, and slogans and made symbols which represent their movement. Both groups, decades apart, also showed up on the lawns of the members of parliament responsible for the laws being protested, and made a list of demands outlining what it will take for the protests to stop. 40 years apart, but asking for the same thing: total body autonomy. It is difficult to compare 2 countries that are so different from each other. But if past actions predict future actions, it is my opinion that Poland will be successful in not letting the in vitro discrimination laws pass. Although Poland in the past has not responded well to public demonstrations, the international coverage that social media allows could play a role in having the law reversed or perhaps even making the law more open. I am aware of my bias, and I think so far I have been clear about my position on abortion. I am also aware that I am making Canada seem like a place where abortion is easy to get and public opinion is the same as mine. I am privileged in the way that there are very few barriers for me if I need access to abortion or contraception, and that I have been exceedingly lucky to have gone to schools which teach about contraception, family planning options, and that I live in a city. There are still many barriers for women across Canada, such as the inability to access clinics and or contraception easily, family pressure, and poor resources for education.